The Spider-Verse season patch is just around the corner. We're going to be getting a new season pass card as well as 3 new cards for the month of June. And more importantly, 2 of those 3 cards are going to be going to Series 4 instead of the traditional Series 5. Joined with me today is Wolverthor. What's up? Are you excited about this patch?
I am. Potential new meta maybe. Archetype that we haven't gotten to play with too much. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think Move will have its day. And also, oftentimes when I see these new cards, some of them just look like duds out of the gate. This month looks amazing, and it looks like the cards will see play. I can see all of these cards seeing play. Do you agree?
I do agree. Yeah, I think they're all solid for sure.
The most important thing is that starting with this month in June, 2 cards are going to be released to Series 4 in June. And for me, I'm Series 3 complete and you're Series 3 complete. My recommendation for people that are Series 3 complete is to hoard your collector's reserves until there's a card you want that's in Series 4, and then you have a chance of getting that card for free. That sounds like a pretty good deal, right?
I absolutely agree. I'm for sure going to start doing that now that, like you said, Series 3 complete. You hope to get one of those instead of spending tokens on it.
Right.
It's pretty clutch.
Yeah, because it's 3,000 tokens. Now, there's some confusion on the way that works. It is true there's a pity system where basically 1 in 40 collector's reserves does open a Series 4 card. The problem is that they're done in buckets of 40. So there's a bucket of 40 and a bucket of 40. And if in the first bucket you open a Series 4 on the very first card, and on the next bucket you open the Series 4 card on the very last slot, you can, in theory, go 79 cards without getting a Series 4 card. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen people rage about it, but that's exactly the perfect explanation for it.
Yeah, so they're buckets of 40, and in every bucket of 40, one of them is going to be a Series 4 card. So potentially, I've got 40 collector's reserves saved up. Potentially one of these cards could be free. Now, the very first card is Ghost Spider, and you and I are in agreement on this. What's your take on Battle Pass cards, even if they're garbage?
Buy it. It's the best deal in the game.
Yeah, if you're going to spend $10 on Marvel Snap, the very best place to spend that $10 as far as account progression and so on and freebies, or no, they're not freebies, but bonus stuff, is going to be the Battle Pass, even if the card is not good. Now, I do think this is a good card. Talk about what you like about Ghost Spider.
One of the things that I really like about it is it gives you some flexibility with some of those move cards that you maybe weren't able to, say you get Vulture, but you didn't get another initiative cards like a Doctor Strange or an Iron Fist. This helps you do that one more time. So that maybe you're like, well, I've got Vulture, and you play it. And it's like, all right, well, now I can play Ghost Spider and move Vulture. I like that. And then one of the ideas, which I'm giving you credit for bringing up to me, was that it can also have some flexibility in some other decks, which I had not necessarily thought about when I'm like, okay, I like that. But I think Ghost Spider just allowing you to move. You've got Human Torch up. I think that's a great card to move around a little bit. Multiple Man Dagger. You're taking cards to move them to different locations. Dagger, I think, is going to be one of the cards you see bounce around quite a bit with Move Deck. Between Ghost Spider and Cloak, being able to move Dagger around a little bit, she's going to get to some pretty big numbers.
Yeah, so there's a couple things I like about Ghost Spider. One, her power is appropriate for her cost. 2/3 is kind of like baseline, so that means it's reasonable. So she's adding value for her cost, and it's always felt like the move decks were missing something, and this might be just enough to fuel the Human Torch doubling or the Vulture getting an extra 5 power. And then, it's possible that Ghost Spider could be used as a surprise card on turn 6 in conjunction with a 4-drop where, if you have priority and somebody's going to Shang-Chi or whatever, and you move them out of the way because you have priority. I mean, it's possible, but I think it's largely going to be, used in a move deck. Now,
I would agree, yeah. Most bang for the buck is move.
Yeah. So my take, and we're going to go on to the other three cards, is my take is that this is probably the least interesting one to me of the four cards, but yet I feel like it's a no-brainer because it's the Battle Pass, and I would buy the Battle Pass just for the other stuff, even if the card was not great.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's going to help people get numbers that they weren't able to get before, give them a little bit of flexibility within those move decks where sometimes it might have just felt like, well, I'm Heimdalling on 6. Well, this gives you a little bit more flexibility with, maybe you didn't pull Doctor Strange or something. Now you've got another card to initiate those moves.
Yeah, and I'm going to make a suggestion today to someone that has not played move decks, especially if you're Infinite right now. I would highly recommend taking move decks out for a spin. And why is that?
It is so hard to play move. You've got to get used to it. I mean, understanding sequences, it is.
Yes.
I might argue it's the hardest deck to play in the game.
Yes. Yeah, move is not easy. Definitely play it. And this particular build doesn't even run Dagger, and Dagger is actually one of the more tricky cards to play as well. So, yeah, you wanna play around with move decks. There's definitely a learning curve to it. All right, the next card, and this one here, I'm probably the most personally excited for, is Silk. After any card is played here, this moves to another location. What's your take on Silk?
I really like Silk. We were talking earlier about the cost to power ratio on it, where just a 2/5, you think about Lizard and the fact that he's a 2/5 but has a punishment factor on it. Silk, you look at that and what's the punishment here? So maybe your opponent can manipulate it a little bit. Okay, I guess that's certainly, makes me think a little bit more. But if you play cards like Titania, that you've got to think about how your opponent can manipulate some things that you're doing. And let's be real, like your opponent can manipulate so many things you're doing in game with so many different cards that I just really like the cost of power to this. And that, you think about a card like a Craven or, those hard to reach locations, you keep bouncing around to try to get to Sanctum Sanctorum.
Right.
Okay, I like having this card in my deck.
Yeah, just being able to get into hard to reach locations. I think the obvious synergy is with Craven inside of a move deck, but I would suggest that Silk is going to get played in non-move decks. Like, this seems like just a good stat beast. 2/5's amazing. There's some small synergy with Angela. You could bounce Silk out and get the 2 power, but then I guess she could bounce back in. It could proc Miles,
which is good.
Miles gets played in non-move decks, so I actually think what are the good 2-drops right now? It's Jeff and sometimes Zabu right now. I mean, it feels like it's all about Jeff right now.
Yeah, I would generally agree with that. I'm trying to think what other 2s that I have that I'm even playing.
We used to play a lot. It used to be about Lizard and Scorpion, but it seems like Jeff is the go-to 2-drop right now, and Silk could, definitely, be a big important card as a 2-drop. So this is the one that I'm the most interested in because of the flexibility.
Yeah, I think that's true, because a lot of the 2s that you're going to play are really specific to deck types. Whether it's a destroy or a bounce or. And this gives you some opportunity to, like you said, to pretty much put anywhere. I mean, no matter what deck you're talking about, this can go there.
Right. All right. Now we're going to talk about the most controversial card. I think that this is going to be a hated card. It's basically a mini leech, if you will. On reveal, transform the highest card in your opponent's hand into a pig, keeping its power and cost. So, for example, play this and it targets, let's say, your Infinite, and your Infinite now becomes a 620 pig, and the description will be removed, basically leached out, and it'll read oink, which means that you can play Infinite without the downside, right?
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right.
Or Destroyer would be a good card. But, I mean, if you think about other cards, like what if it hits your Sarah in a Sarah control deck? Whoa. Yeah. Kind of feels like Iceman, right?
Yeah, it does. It's one of those cards that manipulates your opponent, and you don't know the results of that manipulation.
I want to say why I don't like the idea of this card. Now, first of all, I think it's going to be a powerful card. I think it's going to get played in a lot of decks. The other powerful one drops like Kitty and Nebula and Sunspot, typically you want to play them if they're in your opening hand, where Spider-Hand and Iceman can be played later, as late as turn 5 and still have effective, where, Sunspot and Kitty and Nebula, not so much, right? That you really want them in your opening hand, play them early. Now, the developers put out a video where they talked about fun and how when games have a winner and a loser, the net fun is 0. You saw this same video, right? It was
Yes,
from their
I did.
they're from their conference where Ben Brode was talking about the creation of Marvel Snap, and he was talking about creating value even when you're losing, right? And he suggested that the Snap system adds value when you lose. For example, you have a bad hand, you can retreat, and because you retreat, you're saving cubes and it adds value. So it's not just a net 0. I'm going to suggest that Iceman and Spider-Ham are a net negative for fun. I don't know if it did anything to you, so I don't get any value, right? It's not like I played Hulk on turn 6 for 22 power and I win the game, yay. It's like, I played Spider-Ham and you retreated. And your opponent's pissed off and you don't even know why you won. It's not like a net positive. It's a net negative. And I don't know why they would go in that direction, given he had a whole talk about net fun in his speech. So this card doesn't make sense to me as to why they would want to introduce it to the game when they actually care about net fun.
I would agree with that. And there was an interesting Reddit post sometime in the last couple weeks with that concept on it, where you've got those Icemans, those Baron Mordos, now these Spider-Hams. Wouldn't it be a little bit more beneficial and sort of like a buff to these cards, knowing what you are doing to your opponent, so it feels, in this case, a little bit more fun, and in that case, a little bit more powerful. I tend to agree with it. It's going to be, we were talking earlier, this is going to go in all your troll decks, where anytime you've got all the cards that, really mess with your opponent, this is one of them.
Yeah, I'm sure this is going to be Galactus players absolutely hate this. Because they have 6 cost cards, right? And then whether it hits their death or their null or their Galactus, it's not going to be a good feeling for them, right?
I agree. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I think this card's going to see a lot of play. I will be playing it. I'm just worried about this being a net negative and not being fun. It is what it is. Now, lastly, we're going to talk about this card here, which is worded poorly, in my opinion. And we talked about this. And actually, after I explained it to you, you're like, holy moly, the card reads so much differently than what a lot of people think. So the first time this moves to a location, destroy an enemy card there. Now, this is the way that I interpret this card. If they wanted this to only proc once, then why did they add to a location? They could have worded it, the first time this moves, destroy an enemy card there, right?
Absolutely.
And then if they wanted it to proc every time it moved, it would just say, when this card moves to a location, destroy an enemy card there. So there is some sort of restriction to the number of times it'll proc. And I believe it means that the first time it moves to any particular location, it does proc, meaning it could proc in each location once.
Yeah, after talking about this one a little bit, if I think that it's 100%, and I'm willing to say 100% because of everything you've sort of let in with that fact that they really think about how much text they put in this, that it's all about knowing exactly what's card's going to do. So when you see the first time this moves to a location, this is going to, in my mind, 100%, 3 times this can destroy a card. It's the first time it moves to that location, because you could have very much said it any of the other ways that you mentioned. And Glenn has also specifically said, if anyone's not seeing it, that they try to be really short with this text. So every word that is in there matters. And I think because they have to a location and not just every time it moves or whatever they could say there, that's how it's going to work.
I think
which
that's
to me makes it stronger than what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, that sounds well. So there's a lot of cards that can make this trigger. I mean, some of the obvious ones are going to be Iron Fist. You know, you play Iron Fist on turn 3, on turn 4. It's going to hit a random card in a location. So it's not going to be super targeted or specific like Shang-Chi. So I don't know if this is going to be as powerful as Shang-Chi, but the key difference is this guy's a 4/6, right? I mean, that's a big deal. I mean, I know people like, oh, they only took 1 point away. 1 point matters in this game so many times. I mean, how many times has a card been nerfed by 1 point and you look and it's like, wow, I would have won if a card wasn't nerfed. It happens to me all the time.
Yep, absolutely. And that's why they change them by just 1 point. And anytime you're debating a card, well, I wouldn't play that if it was, a 4/5. Or a 4/4 or something along those lines. It's like it's wow, that 1 point made that much of a difference. Well, yeah, it does, because there might be a better option. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this, I mean, you think about this as a 4/6, potentially destroying 1 to 2 to 3 cards. How quickly could this become a 4/20?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? That's pretty insane.
So it seems like it's going to be a very powerful card. I do think that this is going to be a more narrow card. Like, it requires some setup, right? It's not going to work out on its own, where I feel like some of the other cards, like Spider-Ham, can go in like any deck, right? Silk will work in a lot of decks, right? Ghost is probably going to be played with this guy for sure, because this card does require some setup from like Iron Fist on turn 3. Doctor Strange might be a good choice, because it's very often that he may have the highest power, right?
Yep.
So you play him on turn 4, and then Doctor Strange on turn 5, maybe? Does that make sense?
Yeah, you could. Like you said, it depends what you've got on the board, and if it's pretty easy to have a lot of cards on the board under 6, especially at turn 5.
Right. And then at turn 5, Cloak might proc this as well. A turn 5 Ghost may proc this. And then I think the logical choice is going to be a turn 6 Heimdall. And my understanding is, in the original data mine for this card, 2099 was a 4/5. So they must have done some reviewing and decided that it was worth it to bump him up.
Yeah, I think so. And I think the bump up there to the 4/6 mark it probably does make sense, because you really do need to get to the point where, so in turn 5, if you're thinking about it, say you do the Doctor Strange Cloak combo, that's a okay turn 5. What is that? 7 power or 8? Yeah, 7 power. And it's like, okay, that's okay, but it might not be a lot. So if this was a 4/5, maybe it didn't feel as good as they wanted it to. Yeah. So I could see starting off at a 4/6 really making sense. And I think I'm most excited for this, but I also think this card might be the hardest to pull off of the bunch.
I think this is in the category of narrow and powerful. Does that make sense? As opposed to like flexible. Like, some cards are just flexible, and this seems to be the most like targeted, specific deck that it's going to work in. So what's your take on the 4 cards? Let's just go over the 4 cards real quick. And Ghost. So I think we're in agreement on this. Just yay, because it's Battle Pass, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it gives you an option to, be a little bit more flexible with your move decks.
All right. So Silk could be Series 4. Silk could be Series 5. So this could cost either 3,000 tokens or 6,000 tokens. How do you feel about this card?
I like this card more than I originally did, mainly because of the cost to power ratio on it. I think that alone makes this card, it could literally say oink on it and it'd be a good card. So I think this is, I'm a fan of Silk for sure.
Yeah, I have a feeling that Silk is going to feel like Jeff in some ways, like where it's like, I know a lot of people have struggled to spend 6,000 tokens on Jeff, but you know how much I've gotten way more use out of Jeff than so many other cards. I play him like every day in every other deck, right? And I think Silk might be in that category. Spider-Ham.
I like this card on the surface. Your point about not knowing how you affect your opponent is a downside to it. But I do, given the fact that it's 1 cost, and it doesn't really necessarily have a Killmonger risk to it because the damage you're trying to do is affect your opponent. I mean, and so it gets Killmongered. Okay, who cares? It was 1 point. Thank you for freeing up a card space for me. You know, bouncing it could be a lot of fun. I mean, I definitely like it for the troll perspective, but it is a little sad that you don't know exactly what you're hitting. But I don't know. I mean, if this was a Series 5, I wouldn't touch it. Even at Series 4, you know, I'd have to sort of forecast my tokens for the next month or two and go, okay, do I want to spend 3,000 tokens on this? But it's definitely going to be an impact card.
Yeah, this card's going to see play, and it's going to be important. My problem is, like, when I play it, I don't think I'm getting satisfaction from playing it. And when someone plays it on me and I lose the game, I'm going to be pissed off. It's just that simple. I'm going to be, this card is going to piss me off. So, and the only real counterplay to it is going to be, you know, some of these cards like Infinite or Destroyer, let's say. I mean, it's a leech, and if you like leech, well, this is like a miniature leech. And then lastly, 2099. I think this is powerful, but this seems very narrow. This is the one that I'm the most skeptical as far as dumping tokens into. I'm not sure that I'm going to enjoy move decks. I have in the past, but it depends on how much satisfaction I get out of move decks. And if I really like Ghost Spider and I really like the way that feels, and then 2099 makes it feel better, then I'm going to be on board with this. But I think the other two cards are going to see play outside of the move archetype.
I 100% agree with everything you just said. I think that my recommendation for 2099 would be, if you think you're going to play move and enjoy it, then yes, go look at getting this card. But if you're not, do not touch this card. You will not use it. And it's for that reason, it makes me wonder whether it would be one of the Series 4 cards because of that narrow focus.
I think it's kind of specialized. I wouldn't be surprised if this, I don't know what they're going to do with it. I actually don't know. I just know that save your collector's reserves if you're Series 3 complete, because, you know, when these cards drop, then you can open your collector's reserve and proc them. All right. Be sure to head over to Wolverthor's channel. We're also going to shoot another video for his channel, so you're going to want to be sure to check that out. And as always, thanks for watching and keep on gaming. Bye for now.